Hello and welcome to How I Built This Resilience edition from NPR. I'm Guy Raz. I hope everyone is doing well. This is where we're talking about how businesses are building resilience during these very challenging times. And today, my guest is Morra Aarons-Mele. She's the host of The Anxious Achiever. It's a podcast that looks at work life and mental health. She's the founder of Women Online. It's a digital marketing agency that works with nonprofits and political campaigns. And Morra is also the author of a book called Hiding in the Bathroom, an Introverts Roadmap to Getting Out There When You'd Rather Stay at Home, which is like, it's just like my autobiography, story of my life, Morra. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Guy. It's great to be here.
It's great to see. We had you at the How I Built This Summit. I think 2 years in a row. We had to cancel it this year or postpone it, but we're gonna do something virtual in 2021. So anyway, welcome. It's great to have you here virtually. For anybody watching, we are taking your questions on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, however you're watching, YouTube. You can submit your questions for Morra. If you're an introvert and you have questions about how to navigate the world as an introvert, because I have a lot of questions about that, Morra is here to help. So first, Morra, can you tell us a little bit about The Anxious Achiever and Women Online? Like what are they? What do they do?
Well, so I have two jobs, which is actually great in a pandemic, I guess, if you're anxious. Women Online is a company that I started 9 years ago, and we've always been virtual. We've never had an office. We are a team of, sort of badass internet pioneers who create digital campaigns that mobilize women for social change. We've worked on 3 presidential campaigns, and for some of the biggest change makers in the world, people like Malala Yousafzai and the UN. And I'm so proud of the work that we do because it all comes from my early life as a blogger, frankly, when I realized that the sheer act of someone going online and saying something that was their truth from their heart was powerful, right? And so that's what we do. We bring women together, we create content, and hopefully make some good change. I created The Anxious Achiever because I have clinical anxiety. I have lots of different kinds of anxiety. And it was really hard for me to be an entrepreneur. And I needed a roadmap, but there wasn't one. So I decided to try to make one.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like there was a problem you have that you wanted to address, and a problem that a lot of people have. So let's talk about this. I mean, here you are, you're an entrepreneur, you've got this collective and you've got this marketing, business, and you are an anxious entrepreneur, an anxious introvert, and an anxious achiever. Tell me about that. How does that factor into your day-to-day life?
Well, but Guy, you're an introvert.
Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. See, but what do you do every day? You talk to people.
I know. And I do live shows in front of like thousands of people and give speeches. I know. But for me, it's not that I'm shy, although sometimes I am, or a little bit awkward. It's more that I try to put so much into it because I really want to be there for everybody who has questions and wants to interact. But there's a certain point where I just can't anymore. I can't physically do it.
That's all it is. I think we overthink introversion. I mean, I've been in a room when you've held the stage of thousands of people. It's like a tent revival. You have got that room. But my guess is after a summit or a big show, you're like, leave me alone. Right?
I'm like out. I'm asleep at 8.
Yep. Yeah. That's all it is. Happy introverts who don't have overwhelming social anxiety, we can talk about that in a minute, need to manage their energy. And some of the most compelling, I always say Oprah, huge introvert talks about it all the time. It's not about, can I hold the room? Am I funny? Am I shy? It's just about managing your energy and building in less stimuli, more alone time.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, are introverts, and this is something that I think that is a bit of a misnomer, they're not always shy, right?
No, they're not always quiet. Introverts can be funny. Introverts can be president. There's so many misconceptions, I think, about what an introvert is. And I think you and I are both kind of gabby introverts, right? That I think that we're still working through it. There's no blood test, right? So it's not like you can say I'm a type A introvert. you know it if you're someone who walks into a lobby, and if it's in the old days, the music is loud, the lights are loud, there's people everywhere, it's just a lot of stimuli. And then you have to go to a day long's worth of meetings and you like, no, this is exhausting to me.
Yeah.
I
walk through that lobby and go right to my room and put in earplugs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed.
You know, this is a question I get from a lot of people all the time. They'll say, I listen to the show and I'm so inspired by the entrepreneurs you have, but I'm not charismatic. I don't have, and I'm a little, I'm a little awkward or I don't know how to strike up conversations. And I'm like, do you listen to the show? Like half of the people on the show are awkward social weirdos. You know what I mean? Like there's an idea that you have to be charismatic to be a successful entrepreneur. And I don't think that's true at all.
That's not true. I think it's a legacy of our sort of model of command and control leadership, right? Where we were taught that a leader was very much a salesperson who sort of stood up and held the room, often a white guy in a suit. But the thing about it is you can learn how to hold a room. It's a skill. It's a total skill. It's like learning how to run a meeting. It's like Excel. When you love what you do and you have passion, you can absolutely learn to talk about it in a way that compels people because you're authentic.
Yeah. When did you realize that you could take your observations about entrepreneurship and your own experience and make it a business and then write a book and start a podcast from it?
Well, I still have a day job, let's be clear. But I like that. It's sort of my creative outlet. I actually coined the term entrepreneurship porn in an article in Harvard Business Review, I think in 2013, when I wrote about the idea that entrepreneurs had to be tireless, charismatic, always on the cover of Fast Company magazine. And in fact, that most entrepreneurs weren't like that. And it sort of went viral. Like people really resonated about it. And that's when I started thinking that people really wanted to hear, and you know this because I listen to your podcast, another side of what it's really like to run a business. Yeah. And be out there.
I want to talk, I want to go as much as we can get through some of your really practical tips for anybody. But I mean, a lot of the work you do, of course, is focused on women entrepreneurs as well. But you have this, you wrote an article, I think it was last year, maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, about this rule you call the 10 touches rule, which sounds a little bit weird, but it's not weird. It's the rule, not touch 10 people.
Not physical touch, yes.
Right. It's every week you want to reach out to like 10 people in your network, like a phone call or a lunch or a coffee, which isn't possible now, but you just want to reach out to them. So you want to reach out and touch someone, as that commercial used to say, that AT&T commercial I think it was AT&T. Are you still following that rule today? Do you still try to hit up 10 people a week?
You know what, even more so during the pandemic, because you can't get physically out. So I must admit the 10 touches I stole from my husband, who is a wonderful extrovert and has a skill he still talks to people from first grade. He's that kind of guy. He has an incredible network. I am not that kind of person because I'm an introvert with social anxiety. I may call my best friend on the phone and think that she doesn't want to talk to me. Yeah. Every time I reach out to a client, I want to hang up because I'm anxious. Yeah. So I force myself and I've created methodologies. So 10 touches, if you are an introverted or socially anxious person, but you want to keep building that network, keep building that business pipeline, every week, think of, and it doesn't have to be 10, it could be 5, it could be 7 people in your extended network. These are weak ties, right? This is not your best friend. This is someone who you did a project with 3 years ago. This is someone who they popped up on your feed in Facebook and they've had 2 kids and they've changed jobs. Send them a note, right? Yeah. Send an email, create content. The other thing that I will say, and this comes to anxiety, the act of getting out of your head and saying something nice to someone else, endorsing someone on LinkedIn, it changes your mood. This is actually scientifically proven. So if you find yourself stewing in a bit of anxiety right now about the future and who isn't, write an endorsement for someone you respect on LinkedIn. It will change your day. True.
Oh my, and you've reminded me to do that. It's so true, because if you think about the people in your life, I can remember virtually every person, especially early in my career, who encouraged me, who was like, hey, that was even just passing me in the hallway at NPR and said, hey, I heard your report. That was great. The people who said that to me 25 years ago, I remember Every single one of those, they meant so much.
Yeah.
And especially if you have the ability to endorse or to praise somebody who's younger than you or who you're mentoring, that's so huge. It's so impactful.
The CMO of NPR, Meg Goldthwait, does that for me on LinkedIn. And she's so kind and she's so generous. I met her at your summit. And when she says something nice or shares something I wrote on LinkedIn, I feel like I've been blessed by the sun. You know, and if you can do that for someone, not only will you build your network and it will come back to help you in terms of your business, it will make you happy.
It's so important. So tell me let's talk about this idea for a moment. I mean, we're not at a time where we're getting lunches or coffees. And let's face it, even after the vaccine, I think a lot of us are going to be reluctant to do that, right away. But, let's say you want to reach out to 10 people and they are weak ties, people you maybe met once or twice or haven't talked to in a long time. What would you say in that email?
I think that the first thing to get over is a sense of shame or embarrassment that you're reaching out. So many people feel that they shouldn't have to ask for help, right? Especially if you're an entrepreneur. Especially, if you're trying to make it on your own, you think, oh gosh, why am I doing this? I shouldn't be asking for help. You have to get rid of that, because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, especially, you have to get used to asking people for help. And especially now in the pandemic, we all need a little help, right? No one's going to do it alone. So have in your mind that this is a good thing to do, but also give to receive. I think that the thing that people who get overly overwhelmed by the idea of I have to be networking do is that they reach out right away with too big an ask. They're asking someone to marry them when they haven't even been on a first date. Yep. Tired metaphor, but we all get it.
Yep.
I like the idea very much of giving someone something useful, whether it's an article, whether it's a quick check-in, and then seeing if there's a chance to connect more deeply. And sometimes you have to wait, It takes a long time for relationships to build. I've lost many clients and I've said to my team, they'll be back. Let's be good to them. Let's not write that crummy email that we all want to write, because they'll be back.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I wonder more, given that so much of your work is about, connecting, right? It's this year has really kind of forced you to probably rethink that entirely. I know you recently gave a TED Talk. I think it was a couple months ago, about 2 months ago. And all TED Talks now are virtual, by the way. It's so crazy because there's no audience, right? They're happening in people's homes and in studios. And your talk was about how to kind of deal with this virtual work environment that many of us have found ourselves in. And one of the things you talk about is don't try to recreate the culture that you've got in the office place online, because that's not possible, and that actually is going to be counterproductive. What did you mean by that?
I think that a lot of people, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, when we thought it may not have been 9-10 months, just slapped the old routine onto Zoom. So if you had 6 meetings a day in the office, all of a sudden you had 6 on-camera meetings. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, and you'll understand this, a Zoom meeting is really a performance, especially if you're talking. If you're not talking and you're on Zoom, you're actually more likely to become disengaged and depressed. So Zoom is often draining for everyone, even introverts. There was a lot of articles about, the introverts are so happy. They sit in their PJs all day. And no, we feel disconnected too, because we're all just out there performing on Zoom, wondering what the social cues are, sort of fake connecting and not getting any real energy back. So my first piece of advice is to do less Zoom. It's not rocket science. Switch, do sort of like a ratio. I have like a 1-to-3 ratio. For every 1 Zoom, I try to do 3 audio calls, because I think it recharges people. They don't have to be on camera. They're more focused. Don't just put the old rules onto the new schedule. Build in breaks, respect boundaries, etc.
Yeah. And one of those, I think, jumping off that idea is anxiety, right? This year has been, for a variety of reasons, there have been many reasons to feel anxious this year. But I think it's been a year that has heightened anxiety among some people and at certain times. And you've talked about this too. You've talked about how even in the best of times, you might be found hiding in the bathroom to avoid people, and I so know that feeling. So for people who are kind of struggling with this, whether they're leaders of teams or people who are part of teams in office environments, what are things to sort of keep in mind when they're trying to manage anxiety in a remote environment?
Well, I think that's the remote environment is key, right? Because fostering real connection is harder. We just talked about that. I think the first thing is to acknowledge that you feel anxiety and that your team probably does too. And depending on the kind of team you have, you can say, wow, I'm feeling anxious. This is really hard. But you as a leader also need to remember that you need to create kind of a holding environment, right? So I think one of the things that leaders struggle with, but I think is okay to be a little bit vulnerable with, is to say, oh my gosh, this is really hard. I don't know. I said this to my own team at the beginning of the pandemic when we lost 30% of our business overnight, when South by Southwest and all those, I don't know they were all emailing me saying, am I going to have a job? And I said, I don't know what 6 months from now will look like, but your job is protected right now. And you have my commitment that I will try the best I can. They knew I was anxious, but I also felt like it was my job as the leader of the team to not be a mess. And I think that every leader has to find that balance of being vulnerable and open and not denying reality, but not being a full-on mess in front of the team.
Yeah.
And, the other thing is this sounds silly, but we joke about doom scrolling, right? Doom scrolling on Twitter.
Yeah.
Don't do it right before a big meeting.
Yeah.
Don't let that fear into your workday. Protect yourself because it is scary out there.
Yeah, I go through periods where I just don't check social media, like 2 or 3 weeks, and it. Admittedly, we have a wonderful social media manager for How I Built This, Julia Carney. So we still obviously are putting out incredible stuff, and I work with an amazing social media coordinator, Tori. So there's still stuff out there, but yes, I mean it is really important to just ignore it for a while. You mentioned anxiety and leaders and showing up and dealing with it. I had a conversation with a pretty prominent CEO about a week and a half ago. He's a bit older, over 60, and we were talking about this idea of vulnerability. One of the things that we try to do in How I Built This is draw out vulnerability, because I think it's really important. I think that authentic leaders show vulnerability, right? Mm-hmm. And I have found that it's easier for younger leaders to understand and adopt that, but harder for older leaders to do that. People will often ask me, well, why is it so important for leaders to show vulnerability? Why do you want to draw that out? What's so important about some founder being vulnerable on your show? Why does that make them a better leader? And sometimes I have a hard time answering that question. I think I know what the answer is, but I have a hard time answering that question. What's your answer to that question?
Well, I have two answers. One is internal. When you know yourself and you know that you can be vulnerable, you have self-awareness. And we have 40 years of data showing that emotionally intelligent people are better leaders. They just are. When you know what's going to set you off, when you know what makes you anxious, when you know that something's going to trigger your anxiety in a negotiation and maybe lead to a worse outcome, you're going to get a better outcome because you're not going to get triggered as much. To me, it's just simple. When you understand yourself, you're better, right? And people respond to people who understand themselves, who have empathy, and who aren't fake. I mean, I think at the end of the day, people throughout this pandemic have been scared to pretend like things aren't a mess. But the truth is, we all know it's a mess. You can't pretend otherwise. And so I don't want to be led by someone who pretends like things are perfect. I have no trust in that person. No. And so a little bit of vulnerability goes a long way. Now, you need competence. Amy Cuddy has done this research. Competence and strength is the ideal mix of what people want to see in their leaders.
Yeah. I love that.
All right.
Yeah.
Competence and vulnerability.
Yeah, no, I love that. And thank you for that. That's a great answer. I want to get to some questions. We have a bunch of questions. And they're also good. So I want to try to get to as many as possible. This is from Graciela via LinkedIn. And Graciela asks, how do passionate entrepreneurs who are introverts, how do they become successful when so much of like the customer adoption and venture funding is about engagement and pitching and things like that?
Again, it's a skill. So I think that really narrowing down and practicing is really important. People make fun of having an elevator pitch, but I think all of us can agree that that's one of the hardest things in life to do. But you got to put that work in up front. And then once you know it, it's muscle memory and you got it. You
Right.
got it. And then as soon as you can, hire people around you, right? Hire someone who just loves to go out and schmooze. But don't ever think that the fact that you get nervous before you go talk to people and you want to throw up and you want to hide in the bathroom means that you can't be a successful entrepreneur, because every successful entrepreneur feels that way.
Do you know what, Graciela, I'm going to tell you something. I get nervous all the time. I've been in public, I've been on the radio for 25 years. I still get nervous. My heart still starts to flutter when the red light goes on, the mic light goes on. I still happens. I'm not exaggerating. Even before I do these, I still get nervous sometimes. I get nervous before I give speeches, before I have live shows, before the How I Built This Summit. I always get nervous. And what I find is my heart races and my pulse is, speeds up, and it lasts for about 10 or 15 seconds. And then it's gone. It feels like an eternity on stage. It feels like it's lasting forever. And it feels like everybody can see it, but nobody can see it. Only you can see it and feel it. And once I really kind of realized that and internalized that, I understood that it was just part of the deal, that I was going to get nervous and I just had to get through it, and then it was going to pass.
And I bet when you first started out, Guy, you might have been nervous for 2 weeks beforehand.
Oh my God. I was taking like breathing classes. And the first time I hosted Talk of the Nation, which was an old NPR live show this is back in 2008. A national live show. I was so nervous for 6 weeks. I was doing yoga every day and breathing exercises. I couldn't sleep for 6 weeks. So I remember that.
Yeah. But you work through it and you persist. And I think that's the lesson, and that builds resilience.
Yeah. Totally. All right. More questions. This is from Joseph McCarthy. What are your best coping mechanisms and systems that help you manage the overwhelming aspects of entrepreneurship?
Team. I learned, even though I'm an introvert and I love to be alone and I work alone and I have since 2006, that if I feel alone, I fail and I go hide under my covers and ignore and avoid, and that is death. Every entrepreneur knows if you avoid problems, they explode. So I had to learn that I needed someone early on, and it was going to cost me money that I probably needed in other places, to help me not feel alone and to take on the things that were scary. For example, when we had that, oh my gosh, we've lost 30% of our business overnight in March this year, it was my partner who showed me an Excel spreadsheet and said, you know what, let's adjust the forecast. We can do this. I was a wreck. I was having panic attacks, and she showed me an Excel spreadsheet and it was okay. So think about what makes you feel more in control and more held. It could be other people. It could be advisors. It could be hiring staff.
Totally agree. And this is why we often talk about find your co-founder, because many of the people who come on the show actually did have a co-founder, but we're only interviewing them. But having a co-founder or people around you, a team around you, or people that you can rely on, or a partner, somebody who can just, has a different perspective. Get on the balcony, right? Ron Heifetz at Harvard Kennedy School used to talk about getting on the balcony and looking down at yourself and taking stock of the situation. This is a question. Here's a question from from Anthony Simon via LinkedIn. Anthony writes, I have struggled with anxiety and introversion throughout my career, especially at networking events. I know that feeling, Anthony. Are there any tools or suggestions for managing these feelings? Or like, say you're in a networking event and you're just, you're standing there alone. And I've been to conferences TED conferences and other conferences where I'm like, I don't know anybody. And this is, before I did How I Built This and nobody knew who I was. And I was just there standing around. And how do you approach people? How do you start conversations with people at these events?
You walk up to them and you say hi and you smile. Honestly, what brings you here? My friend Allison Shapira, who's a great speech coach, her advice is all you have to say is, what brings you here? And let the other person do the work. Don't overthink it. You do not need to give a Nobel Prize speech in your very first hello at a networking event. And the other thing I would say is, if it's causing you that much pain, leave. I mean, I think a lot of us also think when we're entrepreneurs that if we leave the event, we're missing out on our big VC funding or our big seed round. You're not. If it's causing you that much internal pain, go home, write some killer blog, get it placed, do something on LinkedIn, find your channel that works for you.
All right, this is a very, very specific question. I think a really important question. It's from Christine Marie Malari. Marie asks, for women hopping on their first Zoom call with, that important person, like let's say an investor or somebody they're pitching, should I wear makeup or not? And Christine Marie says she read from a study that too much makeup actually makes you look inauthentic.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, tell that to news anchors. I think it's about your brand. As an entrepreneur, if you're pitching, you need to have a good idea of what your persona is. I think that that's really important. And if you're a socially anxious entrepreneur, can really help you. I have known many women entrepreneurs and part of their brand was red lipstick. And they were like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I wear red lipstick. Some women don't wear any makeup. But what I like to think about is, what is the holistic brand that I want to present? And that should be who the investor meets. If you have never worn makeup in your life, don't wear false eyelashes in your first investor meeting. So really it's about what kind of CEO do I want to present to the world?
And Chris Marie, we did an episode with Melissa Butler of the Lip Bar just a couple of weeks ago. Such a cool story. It's a cosmetics brand, and she talks about this, about how it's not about wearing, I'm kind of paraphrasing what you said, but it's not about wearing makeup for the sake of wearing makeup. It's about feeling powerful in whatever way that makes you feel powerful. If it's wearing some lipstick or not nothing at all, it's how it makes you feel. And I thought that was a really important perspective. So you might want to check out that episode of How I Built This with Melissa Butler. Thank you for that question. We have time for one or two more. Let's get a question from Claire Murashima. Hello, Claire. Great to have you back. Claire is a longtime listener and a fan of the show. Claire asks, where do you draw the line between vulnerability and oversharing for somebody who is experiencing anxiety?
I have a little saying that a therapist friend of mine told me: no on-camera meltdowns. Leave the mess at home for your therapist, right? You could say to your team, I really want to run through these numbers because the economy is very uncertain and I want to make sure that we have a good handle on the next 6 months. They don't need to know that money makes you anxious because of your parents' divorce, which frankly, money makes me anxious because of my parents' divorce, but that's my brand. So I think it's really about, again, thinking through being strong and vulnerable and how much am I comfortable with? But I think that oversharing in the social media age is a temptation that a lot of entrepreneurs might feel, actually, because a lot of our favorite entrepreneurs do seem to be able to share a lot, right? And when they get on Guy's show, but they've already made their $1 billion. And I think that it's really important not to show the mess. So practice vulnerability with not the mess.
This is a question from Raven via YouTube. Raven asks, how do you manage energy levels? Raven is an introvert with bipolar tendencies. There are times when Raven's energy is absolutely through the roof, and then times where, they just tank and they're, through the floor. How do you manage your energy?
Well, I have the same, and I get a little manic. So when you're a little manic and you're on Zoom, for example, having a prop. My friend Anne Choquette actually showed me this one when I get too fidgety. Have a prop in your hand that you can sort of fidget with, or have a fidget. When you're feeling like your energy is very low, I think it's really important to shut down the screens and get some fresh air and do some belly breathing. Put your feet on the floor and breathe, not in your chest, which is where we hold anxiety. Breathe in your belly.
Yeah.
Really try to center it and redirect the energy. And if alone time is what you need, take alone time.
Yeah. And I would add to that, Raven, you've heard this a million times. I'm so sorry that I'm repeating this for the millionth and one time. Exercise. I hate exercise, Morra, but I do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it every day for, forever and ever. I get out of bed and I'm like, today I'm just not going to do it. And I do it. And it's great. Because that actually has a huge impact on regulating my energy over the course of the day.
Well, Guy, and real talk, I have depression as well. And so I have some days when it's hard for me to get out of bed, when I feel really, my mood is so low. And I know, and I'll say just 10 minutes more, just 10 minutes. It's like that mood flip. It's like endorsing someone on LinkedIn. When you are an anxious, depressive entrepreneur, you get very good at having little hacks, and a little bit of heart rate raising is really one of them.
Before I let you go, Morra, this year, I mean, your business, you a big part of your business is, as you mentioned, conferences and being part of conferences and helping or organize them. Tell me about, as you look ahead to 2021, we can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine being distributed, but it's still going to be a disrupted year. There's no question about it. How are you building in resilience within yourself and your business and what you do to make sure that you can get through 2021 stronger and, wiser and better at what you do?
So Guy, I'm proud to tell you that I gave out bonuses to my team yesterday, that we had an amazing year, because although I was an anxious wreck when we lost the live event business, my team, who are empowered, said, we're going to figure this out. What kind of content do we want right now? And they created we did over 25 live events that reached over 500,000 people.
Wow.
And we created real entertainment for people that met the moment. And guess what? I had to manage my anxiety and let them do what they did. And that helped me build so much resilience, because I learned, just because I feel this way doesn't mean it's true. My team is great. And so my lesson going into 2021 is to get out of their way and really remember that we're all in this together, and that our clients were right there with us, right? How do we make virtual events that people want to see? And it was such a learning experience. It's beautiful.
That's awesome. Morra Aarons-Mele, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Guy.
Sorry I couldn't get to all your questions, Josiah, and so many others. I'm sorry, but thank you for watching. Thank you for, I'm going to say hello to a couple of people watching. Abigail Barron Miguel says, hello, Morra. I think we went to high school, had French class together. Zachariah Philander in Cape Town, South Africa. Doug Wessel Schmidt in Grandview, Missouri. Betsy Suda in Gainesville, Florida. Debbie Tucker in Boston. So many others. Thank you for watching. A couple of quick announcements. We're taking the next 2 weeks off because it's, the holiday time, but we're going to have some new content on the podcast for you. We had a new episode that dropped on Monday. It's a story of Riot Games and League of Legends, one of the most popular video games of all time. It's a fascinating story. I am not a gamer. I actually am like an anti-gamer, but I love this story. I loved interviewing those guys and hearing how they built this business model out of ones and zeros. This is an amazing story. Monday, our last new episode of the year is with Tim Ferriss. Tim is a friend. I've known Tim for a long time, for a while, and it's really cool. I mean, we really go into his life story, and you will get so much out of that. So check that out on Monday. Also, if you haven't already picked it up, How I Built This Book, which is a book for introverts, for extroverts, anybody who's looking for ideas on how to start a business or how to kind of think entrepreneurially. Check it out. It is available wherever books are sold, in independent bookstores especially, so check it out. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you again, Morra. I will see all of you here on Thursday at 9 Pacific, noon Eastern, after the new year. Happy holidays to everybody, and thanks for being with us.